Welcome to today's Politics and Tactics Hangout. It's a very sad day. Today, FDNY is laying a brother firefighter to rest. We have some great guests today, and we have a serious topic. We're going to talk about the vaccine mandates. I've also been getting a lot of questions about the Boston injunction, which I did some research on, so I think we'll be able to address that as well. To start, we have Andy Singleton on he is a New York City firefighter. He is not here speaking for New York City Fire Department or in any other capacity than Andy Singleton. And we really appreciate him coming on today, especially with everything that's going on with FDNY right now. Andy, if you'd like to address the funeral today, please, you have the floor.
I appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me. And right off the bat, just to address the elephant in the room, I do feel a little compromised and definitely in quite a pickle or predicament, if you will, in that as we are doing this, there is a line of duty funeral going on for one of our brothers in the FDNY, firefighter Jesse Gerhardt from Ladder 134 in Rockaway, Queens, aka the Big House. And I had to make a tough choice whether or not I should appear on this. And just so anybody listening who might want to scrutinize it, my choice and reason for being here, I was originally asked to come on and discuss the mandates that we're facing and the vaccine and all that kind of stuff. I was supposed to be on the January episode, and I had to bail last minute because there was a line of duty funeral for a member of my company who had passed from 9/11 illnesses. And Frank and Bobby and PJ were kind enough to say, hey, we totally get it. We'll get you on next month. And sure enough, even more has happened and transpired since that time in the last month. And I figured, you know what, I'm coming on to talk about the mandate. I'm coming on to talk about the vaccines. I'm coming on to discuss the strange coincidences going on with members that we're losing. We've now lost 6 members in less than 4 months since these mandates went into effect, and not trying to draw any conspiracies or point any fingers at anybody. But I figured I might be doing more good and honoring the members we've lost by appearing today. I know you guys aren't, handing a microphone to everybody. So I'm in this unusual and honorable and noble, opportunity to speak for others. And I figured my voice might be better served today by doing this. And hopefully that's understood by anybody that wonders why I wasn't at a line of duty funeral. It's something we don't ever miss. And like I said, I hope I'm making the right decision by doing that. And just wanted to put that out there first. So to the Gerhardt family, to the members of the Big House, to Bobby Cruz, Robert Cruz from 301, who was recently promoted. His funeral was yesterday. As I mentioned, we've lost 6 members in the last 4 months. Firefighter Vincent Malveau, Lieutenant Joe Maiello, Lieutenant Thomas Keary, firefighter Christopher Viviano, and now Jesse Gerhardt and Robert Cruz. So just want to make sure all those names are honored and remembered. And hopefully that's what me being here today is helping.
Bobby, I'll start with you.
Well, first, Andy, thank you for being here. And this is certainly an important topic. The Uniformed Fire Officers has requested a formal investigation at these deaths, as I'm sure you're aware. We'll talk about that as we go through this conversation today. Interestingly enough, when they asked for that investigation, there were only 5, and now we have 6. So it's a very serious topic. And the word conspiracy theory gets thrown around a lot today. Reasonable inquiry is reasonable inquiry. And Thomas Jefferson once said, question boldly. And he was writing to his nephew, and he continued, even the existence of God, because wouldn't God be more honored by the homage of reason than just blindfolded fear? And I'm paraphrasing what our founding father, Thomas Jefferson, said there. But President Kennedy once remarked he had 17 Nobel Prize winners in a dinner at the White House. And he walked in and he said, I don't believe that we've ever had as much intelligence at a White House dinner as we do right now, with the exception of when Jefferson dined alone. So it gives you an idea for how people who consider reasoned debate enjoy reading his works even today. The man was brilliant. So before we begin, I just wanted to do a quick commercial shout out. I apologize, but we do need to do this. We have to pay the bills. FDIC is going great guns. I hope that David obviously will be teaching. Andy, we hope to see you teaching there in the near future. And I know we'll cajole you to do that, as we know you're writing now and have quite an interesting career. You'll talk about that in a bit. But obviously, David is a staple at FDIC. Everybody knows who David is. And well known throughout the nation, a trusted voice in the American Fire Service, has been for many, many years, and now in a new vocation where he's now working with the volunteer side of the house in the great state of Maryland. And David will fill us in a little more on that. And we have his lovely wife, which is amazing. It's so nice to see you. And, no matter what anybody says, there's always the brains behind the throne. And I know it's true in my home, and I know it's true in David's home, and I'm sure it's true in Andy's, and I know it's true in Frank's. So that's being said, registration's going well. We have several classes, if you're on the hot side of the house, that are filling up. They're going to sell out. Eckert's Tactical Solutions is going to sell out. Writ Under Fire is going to sell out. I mean, soon. So if you're thinking about those two classes in particular, get in there. We have a brand new offering for hands-on training for the medical world, for the paramedical side of it. Active Shooter now has the whole component where you not only extricate the patient, but there's going to be the wound care and the treatment and the packaging and all that goes along with that in the Active Shooter class. We have a water rescue class, never been offered before. Real water, and I know the FDNY is really upping its water rescue program these days. A bunch of great training went on last week in the New York City Fire Department with their water rescue. So we've got a surface water rescue class being given by one of the most preeminent instructors in the world on water rescue. Mike Hudson's actually the man who on Shark Week dove into the water and extricated one of the fellows from Jackass, and this makes sense now, who was swimming with a real shark in the real ocean, and the shark bit him. Couldn't have seen that coming. But anyway, Mike Hudson is the medic who dove in and rescued this fellow on Shark Week. And he is the gentleman who's leading this class. So you're dealing with a man who not only does water rescue, has done it for his entire life, but he's considered the go-to individual when people do high-risk water evolutions in the greater world, if you will. So unique opportunity to learn from one of the most dynamic and entertaining and incredible instructors. Other classes that are hands-on, please register early for hands-on. Writ Under Fire is going to be selling out. That's the Illinois Fire Service's incredible course offered only after drilling at the speed of flashover. There's so many classes there that I can't help you. Once we hit those limits, there's strict rules that we have to follow because of safety. I can't get you in there once it fills. So please register early. With the COVID thing kind of going away across the country, all those restrictions are lifted. Registration is going through the roof. It's through the roof. It's going to be a really big show. Anybody who knows who that invitation was, I'll send you $5. Oh yeah. Good old Ed Sullivan. Really big show. Coco Gijo will be out here in just a moment. And so anyway, there's a good vague reference for you, right? So that being said, we really look forward to seeing you at FDIC. It's going to be a remarkable show. We've got some fantastic stuff going on there. We really appreciate all the support. A lot of new stuff with EMS. All of our EMS classes are CAPC certified. So if you're an EMT or a paramedic or a nurse or a first responder who needs medical CE, 48 hour 45 classes are fully CAPC certified. All our hands-on in the medical side is CAPC certified. So you can come to FDIC and easily pick up 36, 40 hours of CE during the week if you need to get that done. If you're a training chief out there and you got folks that are missing CE credits, water rescue, airway, moulage, all of those hands-on, pediatric class is not only CAPC credited, it's a certification course from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So we've got some amazing opportunities for the EMS side of the house. We're bringing it all together this year. One of my ancestors, my great-grandfather once said, New York City firefighter, he once said that there was no reason for man to go into a burning building except to save another man. And what he meant was mankind in general. But Joe Croker, saving a human life. Getting them out of the building is the first step. Keeping them alive is the second step. So we've really just embraced that in a really important and meaningful way. And we're bringing that to the fore. Workshops are really going fantastic. Just some amazing people teaching in there, including a guy who once had a Supreme Court decision named after him. I can't remember his name, some Italian guy. So make sure you take advantage of getting in Frank's class and PJ's classes and all the other amazing instructors that we have in the workshops. Opening program this year, Lifetime Achievement, is going to your compatriot, John Salka. This year, Battalion Chief John Salka, recently retired from the FDNY. He's getting Lifetime Achievement. Keynoters, Doug Mitchell, Captain Mitchell. He will be keynoting, as well as Doug Shaw, Dave Page, and the Frank Viscuso is going to bring it home on Thursday afternoon. So main program is just going to be unbelievable. Some of the finest voices of American firefighters. You don't know who Captain Mitchell is on the FDNY, just an amazing individual. I hate being old, but I was friends with his dad. So it's just great to see these guys now really becoming the leaders in the fire service, who you always knew the potential of these men. When you talk about Dan Shaw and Doug Mitchell, those are two of the finest gentlemen you will ever meet in your entire life, hands down. Two guys who, irrespective of all the great people you're going to meet in the world, those are very memorable and incredibly significant people. So it's a huge pleasure to have them on. So that being said, the classes are ready to go. The Fool's Bash. Oh, final thing. I almost forgot. I'm wearing my Firefighter Cancer Support Network shirt. The 5K fun run on Thursday night is now being run by the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. We greatly appreciate your participation. Even if you don't want to run, just give us the $20. We'll give you a t-shirt, and you can tell everybody you ran. And we won't rat you out. So please support the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. We'll be running on Thursday night, as we always do. The stair climb is on Friday afternoon. Please support that. That's hugely important. That money, a lot of that money goes to providing counseling to the FDNY counseling services, as well as many, many others that support firefighters throughout the country. So the NFFF does God's work with that stair climb money that they bring in. And people always ask where it's going. Let me tell you, it's going to firefighters, guaranteed. That they do a great job with that. So please support the climb. Fool's Bash is on. The alcohol that's sold there goes right to the fools, and they just buy more alcohol. I won't lie. But that's a great thing too. So it's a great event. Please support the Fool's Bash. The Union Party is on. Stop, Drop, and Rock and Roll is on, and all the other festivities. So mark your dance card. We'll see you in April in Indianapolis, where everybody wants to be, and we'll have a great time. So that's the end of the commercial announcement. I'll turn it back over to Frank, and we'll start our more serious and sober discussion.
Thank you, Bobby. And, I'm really looking forward to FDIC, but, it's kind of a sad time in our nation. And I always say that the East Coast with Connecticut and New York and California it's kind of like, it equates to a vice of bad public policy that tries to squeeze out the rest of the country. And we've seen firefighters in Seattle, Washington, Oregon, New York City lose their job because they wouldn't get a vaccine. They were making a choice that they wouldn't get a vaccine. Others that wouldn't get it, that were compelled to get it just to put food on their table. And yet all these firefighters were asked to show up every day during the pandemic when we really didn't know the answers. Now, I'm triple vaxxed. I have a family member at risk, and I made that decision based off of my own risk assessment. But I don't believe that the government should be compelling people to get a vaccine. It should be a choice, especially when we know now that those who are vaccinated can spread the virus as well. Andy, it's an honor to have you on. And again, you're speaking for yourself, not as a member of the New York City Fire Department, but it's really important for our viewers to because it's a hard topic for our viewers to actually put a face and a name to kind of what's going on in our cities across the country. So if you could kind of tell us what's going on in New York City, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and honestly, the honor is mine for you guys inviting me to be on here. You said I'm not speaking for the fire department itself. That's correct. I am not. I do have my ear to the ground, and I'm not specifically speaking for any members, but I do think I'm saying some commonly held beliefs amongst, what we're all thinking and feeling. To kind of backtrack this thing a little bit, we are all talking to each other. So we all are feeling the same things, going through the same things. But that's not really who needs to hear this. Who needs to hear this is the people that are tuning us out and shutting us off and just automatically coming to their own conclusions because of just the division that's been drawn in this country. And again, I'm not trying to go on any different tangents of whether it be political or conspiracy or pro this or anti that. I'm just simply saying we've lost our ability to have conversations in this country, and this profession doesn't allow for that. We go and do pre-investigations of buildings where we do building inspection, to see what we're dealing with, to see what we're up against, to see what we're going to have to combat at 4 p.m. when the conditions are perfect. So we know at 4 a.m. when they're not, kind of have an idea. We go over and, quote unquote, buff out jobs after we're finished to see what we did and what we could have done different and how we could have done something differently, or, if something else had happened, what could have been a tangent to our operation. So we're constantly going over things from pre-scene size up to post-scene, analysis. And I made the comment the other night when I was doing the radio show with you that there's this misnomer that firefighters run into buildings while others are running out. And I correct that all the time and say we walk into buildings, and that goes to our size up. We're looking constantly at what's going on. We're looking up, we're looking down, we're looking around us. We constantly know where we're at and our whereabouts. And that's all we're asking for people to understand. We're not running towards a solution for COVID with the vaccine. We're asking people to understand that we're saying, listen, we're not adverse to the vaccine itself. We're adverse to you forcing it on people that don't want it. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. One, as I was saying the other day, and sorry, I'm referencing like Monday's radio appearance that everybody was there. So I'll just start over. When COVID started, New York City was, quote unquote, the epicenter of it. And it's estimated that 70% of our membership actually had contracted coronavirus and COVID, myself included. So we've all been exposed to it in the field. You got to estimate about 20% of our department is administrative. And then you got to figure about 10% of the population just is going to be immune to it itself. So my point for saying that is we were 100% exposed to COVID. And this was a full year before a vaccine was ever on the forefront or came about. So we had to learn to deal with it. We had to learn to make adjustments. We had to learn to not live in fear of it and just get on with our lives, because we didn't have an opportunity to not show up for work and not do what we took an oath to do. Now, fast forward to January of 2021, when a vaccine became available, and by and large, a majority of our members turned out to get vaccinated. We had, it's believed, 55% of our workforce that voluntarily got vaccinated prior to any mandates on the horizon or, being talked about or known. So when that came about and it was, you have to get the shot or you're going to lose your job, we initially had a vax or test policy, which allowed members that hadn't been vaccinated to do a weekly test. And that was turning out something like less than 1% positive rate. So we had these policies in place that were working, that were showing that we weren't an issue. We weren't giving this to the public. We weren't getting sick ourselves with it. Anything different than what you see happening in the rest of the world. When COVID spikes and we have these waves of it rising, we have our rises as well, just like anything else, just like seasonal allergies or common cold. And that's not to diminish the effects that COVID could have on somebody. I'm not trying to downplay that at all. But we're just simply saying, listen, we know what we're doing. Frank, you had mentioned, your own assessments and just kind of weighing out your options at operations. Same thing for this. Members were taking their own analysis and saying, or their own risk analysis rather, and saying, I'm good. I feel comfortable having had it, that I'm good with what I had. I'm good with my natural immunity. I'm happy to take that risk. Others felt different. Others were in that same boat, but thought they had maybe family members that they wanted to protect. So everybody had a different reason. And this isn't a Band-Aid. You can't just universally put this across the board and say one size fits all for this. And another huge thing that me in particular, and I know a lot of other people have an issue with, is our job is one of the biggest known stressors on the heart, and resulting in heart issues with heart attacks and just fatigue of the heart. And the one known, or at least commonly accepted, side effect to the vaccine is heart issues. So why would you force somebody that's in a line that already risks their heart risk factor and then make them take something that they might be adverse to? And that's all anybody was ever asking, saying, hey, give us an option. We're happy to do it. We're not anti-vaccine, we're anti-mandate. And nobody's listening to us. And it just becomes this political game where we're right, you're wrong, shut up, and just do what we tell you to do. And that's really what this has come down to. Enough is enough. And this isn't about me wanting a raise and thinking you should pay me more. This is about me wanting to live next week and not, put myself in a position that I might not be here because of something you're forcing me to do. And that's all this ever was about. And that's all that, we're trying to make heard. And it seems like as much as we talk, as much as we yell, as much as we scream, nobody wants to acknowledge what we're saying. And the people that do kind of just brush it off like, yeah, that sucks. But that's not good enough. And, we're losing people as a result of it. I'm not trying to draw a direct line to anybody's passing. And I hate that we're in a place in our society that we have to marginalize our members' deaths and kind of dissect, well, how exactly did it happen? But that's kind of where we're at now, because hopefully, as I mentioned at the top of this, hopefully we're doing this for the benefit of others and we're honoring those we've lost by echoing their voices and championing their cause and saying, listen, some of us have to make a sacrifice, but that doesn't mean we all have to succumb to the same things. And that's kind of where we're at. And as far as this mandate goes, we had estimated about 2,000 members that hadn't been vaccinated, and some went on leave without pay. Others complied. You got to consider too, there's a certain section of society, ourselves included, that, you can mail something out on January 1st and say you have until June to respond. There are people that aren't going to respond to July. That's just the way human nature is. So, there was that section as well of those 2,000. It's estimated that we're now down to about 600 or so that are on, quote unquote, the chopping block. To this point, the mayor did lay off members. It's believed 25 of the FDNY, 9 of which were from the fire side. That's a rumored number. I don't know if it was 8. I don't know if it was 12, but we'll go with it was right around 10. And my question is, if we lost 10 members at a fire, we would be treating it entirely differently than just saying, well, they had a choice. And, to me, it's just not good enough. And that's why I'm honored to be able to have a platform to speak about this. And I'm not asking the fire service to share this, because I think we're all pretty much on the same page. I think most of us are, even the members that are pro-vaccine are still anti-mandate. So this is nothing about the vaccine. It's about a mandate and making people, taking away a health choice for members. And so anyway, I'm hoping that this isn't falling on, I don't want to say deaf ears. I hope it's not falling on the same ears. I hope this gets shared to people that actually need to hear this, and eventually up the ladder that might be in a position to do something about it.
Well, one of the things that's really disconcerting about this is that firefighters and the public was giving so much misinformation from the beginning. The vaccine protects you from getting the virus. Then the vaccine, and it may have some protection value, but we know that if you get the vaccine, you can get the virus. Then we had the president of the United States say that you wouldn't spread the virus if you got the vaccine. Joe Biden said it on a town hall. We had Dr. Fauci say masks don't work before he decided to say that they do work. So we were getting misinformation all along. And I think that the mandate policy was basically predicated on the original beliefs. And I think one of the areas where we failed as a society, and where government failed more likely, was to just say they didn't have all the answers yet and explain that we're working towards the answer. And I'm going to bring on Cindy Polikoff, who's definitely Dave's better half. And, she was talking about flying a plane the other night, and she gave some good analogies. But can you start on how the vaccines work and kind of what you broke down on the radio show the other night? Because I think it has some value to our listeners.
Absolutely. And yes, the plane analogy, I have quite a few people ask me, you're a nurse, you've seen it front lines, what these COVID patients look like. Why aren't we doing A, B, C, D? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? One day they're saying one thing, one day they're saying the other. Why? And I always liken it to, we are building this plane as we're flying in it. And, science is doing the best it can. This is a new virus. This is a new thing to a human being. So we do have a lot of learning to do. But what could have gone better from the very beginning is if the government and the scientists had just said that from the start. This is a brand new virus. We do not know what we're dealing with. We can make guesses, we can make educated guesses, we can use computer models, we can do all of these things. But when it comes right down to being honest, we don't know. We don't know anything about this virus. We are making it up as we go along. So when they first started studying this virus, they realized, it's a lot like a lot of the other viruses in that it runs on mRNA, which is half of DNA. Most living things have that double helix that you always see the pictures of, the ladder that's twisted. Viruses, the majority of them run on mRNA, which is just one half of that ladder. And those viruses use the human body, use the host, to make that mRNA into DNA and make more viruses. And that's why they need us. What this vaccine does is, if you remember the picture of the coronavirus that you've seen 1,000 times on TV, it's that circle with all the little spikes sticking off. The scientists were able to take computer models and take pictures of that spike that sticks off of the virus itself. So when the virus gets into the body, it attaches itself to one of our cells. It uses our cells to make more virus. It makes so many of the viruses that our cell explodes, releases more virus into the body, and then it spreads through the body. And then you can spread it from person to person, like we did. We had COVID. And that's how the virus uses us. So what the scientists did is they took a computer model and they took that spike protein, that little protein that sticks off of the virus that actually sticks to our cells, and they made a synthetic version of that strand of protein. It does not use active flu like the flu does, or inactive like chickenpox. It's a very different type of vaccine. And everybody thinks it's a new way of doing things, but actually they've been studying doing this type of virus attack, this type of vaccine, for about 10 years. Actually, our neighbor who lives across the street, who has already been working on the coronavirus for 10 years now. And it's just by complete coincidence that we went to the same college. I've had a chance to talk to him about it. They've been working on this type of vaccine for a long time, good 10, 11 years now. So when this new virus popped up, we actually kind of had a network in place of, let's try this new type of vaccine. They could use the computer models. They could kind of plan out where we were going to go. So they made a synthetic version of that spike. They wrap it in a lipid, in a fat layer. They inject that into our bodies. And that's what kicks our body's immune system into overdrive so that we can fight that virus the next time we see it. And the analogy I made last time was of going to the gym. So say you're walking down the street, you get mugged. The guy beats the crap out of you. He takes your wallet, takes your shoes, goes running off to mug other people. You've been attacked by a virus. So what you say is, I don't want to go through that again. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out. I'm going to get strong. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to learn how to fight. I'm going to learn the muscle memory so that my body knows what to do the next time I'm panicking, the next time I'm attacked. And you build up that muscle and you build up that muscle memory. So the next time you're walking down the street and a mugger comes along, not only do you kick his butt, but you keep him from mugging other people because you wait for the police to come and they take him away. That's what a vaccine does. It prepares your body so that when another virus comes along, you might still get attacked. It's not like a suit of armor so that you won't get attacked again. The guy might get a couple punches in, but you will fight it off without getting robbed. You will not get yourself killed. You will be able to fight it off and hopefully get that guy weak enough that he will not go on to mug other people.
But we are finding that we are still spreading it even when we're vaccinated. Because I know probably over 100 people now that were vaccinated that now have gotten the virus. They didn't have maybe because they had COVID before or because of the vaccine, their reaction wasn't as bad, but some of them, the reaction was really bad and they were able to spread it to their family. So why did everybody get that part of it so wrong?
That I would actually, and again, I, like I said on Monday, I'm not a conspiracy theory person, but the government did us a huge disservice by not saying exactly that, no, we don't know what we're doing. We are building this plane as we're flying in it. Just like the flu vaccine. You get the flu vaccine, you can still get the flu and you can still pass it on to others. It's a much smaller chance, but it does cut it down by 3/4. So by getting the vaccine, by preparing your body and by making it a smaller, much, much smaller chance of passing it to others, you're now developing herd immunity. So that's kind of where the vaccine comes into play. And it does strengthen your immune system. It strengthens everybody's. So instead of me getting full-blown COVID and ending up in the hospital and dying, and then also passing that strong version of COVID onto David and then him also dying, I had a sore throat and a headache. David ended up with a sore throat and an ear infection. Our son got it. He felt bad for about a day. Our daughter didn't get it at all. So that's the difference between getting vaccinated and not.
But we're also seeing, especially out of studies from Israel, that individuals that had COVID, because your body has a natural response, is also helping them fight the virus, just kind of like going to the gym. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yes. Natural immunity is a beautiful thing. Our bodies are very strong. So once you've gotten COVID, you've got, we're not sure how long because we haven't been able to study for very long, but you do have natural immunity for 6 months, maybe a year now. So, we are moving from pandemic to endemic stage to where we could probably get to where we do like the flu vaccine, where every October you get your flu vaccine, you get your COVID vaccine, and you go the year and you keep moving on.
Andy, weigh in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as far as the natural immunity goes. And again, not trying to get too lost in the weeds, but studies out of Johns Hopkins recently were showing that natural immunity has now lasted 22 months since the start of this. So it's not to say 22 months is the end line. That's all we have is the data to research. So natural immunity could be forever. We don't know this yet because it's just not enough on the table yet. But I just wanted to chime in with that because there is a large conversation about you need the vaccine, and as you mentioned before, with the disinformation being spread from the president himself, saying that you couldn't transmit COVID if you had the vaccine. Well, that's obviously not true. And to Cindy's analogy of the mugger and training and whatnot, I used this on the radio show the other night. I said, getting the vaccine is like having a smoke detector in your house. It doesn't mean you're completely out of harm's way from having your house burned down or possibly, tragically losing your life in a fire. It just means you're going to have a head start and you're not going to be caught off guard. So it just having the vaccine alone doesn't, change anything. And natural immunity is already having that smoke detector.
Bobby, I'm going to have you answer a question, but I want you to weigh in on the principle of the issue. And, it's never the herd that stands for principle. It's always the individuals who have made this country great over time that were willing to sacrifice everything for everybody else. And oftentimes when they make that leap, they're ridiculed and pointed at, and we don't romanticize them until later on when we realize how right they were. But I also know that principle doesn't keep food on your table either when you get fired from your job. So you probably speak about principle more eloquently than anyone who I've ever met or know. And I work in a think tank. I'm in some of the smartest rooms in America. And Bobby, the way you talk about principle is very compelling. So if you'd like to weigh in on that before you answer that question, I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Frank. And I don't think I deserve them, but that notwithstanding, several things. As the ombudsman, I will get to the questions on Facebook. Those of you who are putting in thoughtful questions, we will get to some of these. Thank you, Dan Tate, for expressing Dan's appreciation for everybody coming on here to express their viewpoints. It does take courage to talk about things these days. We are living in a unique time of cancel culture where people who disagree automatically dislike, and nothing could be further from the truth. One of my greatest friends in life was Alan Bernasini, and we disagreed on virtually everything, but he was my best friend. He was absolutely my best friend, one of my dearest friends in my entire life. But I couldn't disagree with anybody more vehemently than we did politically and socially. And I still loved him dearly. And Lincoln said it best, that we can't allow the current discourse to forget about what binds us as Americans and the better angels of our nature. And I see that coming back right now. We've gotten past the vitriol, I believe. If you go to Substack and several other places, there's still a few nuts in the basement. You know, you always got your crazy aunt in the basement, you know, railing about whatever, your uncle who believes we didn't land on the moon, whatever. But I think those voices are being dimmed. And most of them are elected people, by the way. Most of them hold positions of power, which is odd nonetheless. But the general public has now had enough of the vitriol, and we're starting to have reasonable conversations with one another like this one. So I think that Chris Johnson had a great question in there, and it relates back to your risk-benefit analysis, Andy, that you opened up with, which is a very intelligent way to go about the conversation. So I'll open up with this. A good friend of mine, Pete Procillo, who's our manager of this event, who's our editor-in-chief of fireengineering.com, he made a statement once. He said, "The virus will make fools of us all." And it's fascinating. And to your point earlier, where you said that we're learning, we're building a plane as we're flying. That's a great analogy. And I understand that analogy. Early on, Niall Ferguson, who was with Imperial College in London, gave a prediction as to what the fatality rate could be of this novel coronavirus. Him being a purist mathematician, didn't weigh in any other variables than just straight math. And he's also a sky is falling kind of guy to begin with. But he put it at 0.7, which is huge, which would have meant like 12 million Americans. And I'm just going off the cuff here, but the numbers were off the charts. And Nassim Taleb has always told us that taking a reasonable amount of concern whenever you're approaching a novel hazard is a reasonable thing to do, right? So that was the initial 15 days to blunt the curve and yada, yada, yada. And it just kind of snowballed from there, given the political advantages that certain people saw they could say and how people felt about it and emotional stuff. And I don't think there was a bunch of, and I could be wrong. There could have been Snidely Whiplashes in their basements trying to do the Great Reset and all that good stuff. I don't know. And so I'm not going to opine on that. But what I am going to say is that I understand when people, because it was a novel virus, they wanted to take concerns in order to try to, learn about it. I do agree with Cindy that as we went further in time and we got more data, much of that data wasn't shared openly with the public, which it should have been. To Andy's point about the efficacy of these medicines, and I'm loath to call them viruses because I don't know anybody with smallpox or polio. So the efficiency rate of them is such that I look at them more as therapeutics. Now, if you want to, in my opinion, and I've written about this twice, so it's no secret, if you want to avail yourself of a therapeutic like a flu shot or the COVID vaccine, good for you. But I also am a strong believer in natural immunity. I think that the body builds up a resiliency. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. But in my world, as a first principle fundamentalist constitutionalist, your choice to take any medicine is yours and yours alone. Now, if you can show me where you not taking that medicine makes you a unique risk, I'm more than willing to look at a mandate. But when you can't do that, then you can't justify a mandate. So in other words, if you have a medicine that says 100% you can't get or give, and it's stop, to quote Rachel Maddow, the virus stops right here, fine. But that turned out to be incorrect. But in all defense of Rachel Maddow, which I can't believe I just said out loud, they're going to take away my constitutionalist card right now. She was going on what we formally conceived of as a vaccine, right? We all grew up knowing if, oh, you take a vaccine, you can't get it. Well, this was more of a therapeutic, right? As we found out now. But the people who developed it originally thought it would kind of stop it dead in its tracks, and it didn't. And that's fine. And even that notwithstanding, in my world, the choice to take a medicine is up to you. It's not up to the government or your boss or the mayor or anyone else. And to create two worlds where you exclude people, where you tell people, if you didn't take it, you can't come to this event, but you're not sick in any way, you're not transmitting anything to anybody more than anybody else could, vaccinated or unvaccinated, that's flat out discrimination. That's flat out authoritarianism and tyranny. And that's dangerous stuff. That's really dangerous territory. So that's what I think this conversation universally we agree on, is that the vaccine was built with the best of intentions. Dr. Malone, I follow him on Substack. He writes about, the early development days, and you were exactly right. They've been working on this for about 12 years, this kind of a medical alternative. And Andy is right. There are adverse side effects, and VAERS has a great deal of them. There have been fatalities, according to VAERS. The numbers are, all over the place. Some people say as high as 20,000. Some people say, less. I'm not going to opine on that. I'm not a scientist. I don't have those numbers, but myocarditis is a real thing. And we know that there's a certain percentage of people that are developing that. I have a relative who has developed myocarditis as a result of the shot. I have 4 friends or 4 acquaintances who've passed away from COVID. 3 of them were fully vaccinated and boosted. And so it is not, it's not a shield of armor that's going to stop you from dying. But could it, to the point earlier, lessen that a lot of that information is still anecdotal because we really don't have a control group. It's hard to, things like viruses are very hard to get solid. People want to say it'll do this, it'll do that, it'll do this or that. That's not how medicine works. Having been a medical test subject for the last 25 years, full disclosure, most people know my history. I don't like to talk about it, but I've been dealing with one form of cancer or another since 1995. And I did chemotherapy yesterday. So, and I don't care. It doesn't bother me, oddly enough. So, right, I'm wearing my Firefighter Cancer Support Network t-shirt right now. So it doesn't mean I don't take it seriously, but what it means is it's my problem. And what medicines I have taken through this tour have been my choices, not the government's and not my bosses. They've been mine. And where I come from, and in the America that I love and that I want us to return to, that's the way we treat things like this. Irrespective, just because you're unvaccinated doesn't mean you're Typhoid Mary and you're going out there infecting the world. It just means that you chose not to take this therapeutic. And that's fine. I think that everyone who was dismissed, nurses, doctors, truck drivers, should be reinstated. Now that we've discovered it's turned endemic, they're no different than the rest of the bloody population. And failure to return them is a tremendous moral hazard, because now you're just overlaying a political reason on it. Oh, we'll look bad, or oh, they didn't comply with our rules. Really, this is America. We wake up every morning and start a little revolution. And if you haven't noticed that, take a look at what they're doing in California right now, firing up their diesels, and look what happened in Canada. You have to be very careful. Giving up one liberty is the beginning of giving up all liberty. And so I've written about it. I have no problem with people taking the medicine. I have family members who've taken it. I have family members who haven't taken it. And I don't feel any different about any one of them. But I certainly think that anyone who supports taking away someone's livelihood because they failed to take a therapeutic by choice, that is evil. That's just tyranny. That's wrong, because they're not spreading disease to anyone any more than from someone who fully complied and got the medicine. And we know that now to be empirically true, without question, that you can be fully vaccinated, get COVID, and spread it. And so now in England, if you're paying attention to the news, yesterday, the British government said, if you get COVID, don't worry about it. Don't even quarantine. Just keep going, because that's where they're at. And that's where we need to get to. And I don't mean go to work and get people sick intentionally. If you're sick, stay home. We've always said that. But that's just a reasonable stance. But to Andy's point, I think that New York City should reinstate everyone they let go. I think that any hospital who dismissed anybody should reinstate them immediately. I think that anybody whose family has been fractured by this ought to get together right now and buy a pizza and shake hands and hug one another again. I think that it is time to let this madness go and speak freely. Now, I would not compel anybody to take the vaccine. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm not a doctor. Even with the Cancer Support Network, I tell people, yeah, I've had a couple of different cancers. I ain't going to tell you a damn thing about how you should proceed. But I will tell you, get multiple points of view, not one or two, get 3 or 4. Because with every type of cancer, with every type of flu, with every type of disease, there are 4 or 5 or 6 different ways you can go. That path is yours alone to walk down. Certainly not any governmental agency, be it Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden or Mr. Trudeau or any of those vapid jackwagons. They can do what they want to do, and I will do what I want to do. But more importantly, as a spokesperson for the American Fire Service, I will defend any firefighter's right to make decisions about their own body to them. And if it does not directly impair their ability to do this job, I will defend them to my last dying breath to stay employed as an American firefighter.
Very, very well said. And I mean,
Yes.
we want everybody to look at the science. The only science anybody's looking at now is political science, and we have to keep, our viewers are out there saying, what can we do? Well, calling and writing your legislator, actually your mayor, your governor, actually does have an impact. It's called policy pressure, and we need to fight this scientifically, but also on the political science side to apply that policy pressure. Some of the city unions have been doing a great job. There's been a lot of confusion over Boston's injunction. And just for our viewers, injunctions are often hard fought and not easily won. To prevail on an injunction, you have to show irreparable harm. You also have to show that you're likely to win on the merits of the case without a fully established court record. Boston won on injunction, but not on the mandate itself. They had a stipulated agreement or a memorandum of understanding. The injunction was over a contract issue, and that's why they were successful. And I congratulate their union on fighting this and fighting it hard. New York City, and I'll go back to Andy in a second, lost their injunction on the mandate issue, but they are continuing to fight when other unions have fallen off. And unions need to realize, and as a union president, I used to invoke my inner John Adams quite regularly. I would defend people who drove drunk and people who beat their spouse. I didn't agree with any of that. However, they paid dues and they had a right in America to due process. So that was my fiduciary duty. The unions have a fiduciary responsibility to not only fight for these firefighters' due process, but to fight for it political. I just saw the mayor of New York City slide down a pole, shaking everybody's hands. Well, the fire service in general, we can't be shaking their hands, the politicians with one hand, when they're taking their other hand and they're writing out pink slips and firing our firefighters. For what? For making their own medical choice. So there is a lot that people can do, and pressure does matter because you're seeing things change across America. Go ahead, Bobby, and then let's go to Andy.
Well, I'd like to get Andy and David and it's Chrissy or Cindy.
Yeah.
The reason I'm thinking Chrissy is my son is dating a Chrissy now. And
It might be the same person.
Oddly enough, you look a lot like her, which is so strange. So I apologize. So, Cindy, I think we'd all agree that we would have no problem if our workplaces said you need to test because we're worried about transmission, because obviously there's a lot of folks who were asymptomatic out there who had it. I'd be okay with that. They said everybody, not just the unvaccinated, everybody has to test every day because we're worried about the spread. That would have been a reasonable thing. But to fire people, I think was just radically unreasonable. I apologize for that quasi rant earlier. But to Andy's point, the voices of these people are not being heard, and these are real people. These are our brother and sister firefighters who we swore we'd have your six, and where are we? I love Eddie Kelly and the International, but they went and, sent flowers and balloons to Gavin Newsom when he won his recall deal. But they didn't, question his decision to allow California firefighters to be dismissed for not being vaccinated. So that's a problem to me. And to
And they haven't stopped any PAC funding either. And even though I wasn't a fan of Harold Shakespeare, when he had to apply political pressure, he stopped all PAC funding. So for the unions out there, they have to apply maximum pressure to protect members that did nothing other than want to make a choice.
And I think that if any politicians hear this, or any of you folks know any of those people, and remember that, politics is interesting. It's a Greek word, poly meaning many, and ticks are tiny blood-sucking parasites. It's an old joke, but it's very true. If you know some of these people, first, my apologies and my regrets for you, but reach out to them and let them know it's not too late. You can always change your mind. The beauty about America is there's always redemption. You can always say, okay, I was wrong. And boy, can you gain great points. You know what I mean? My third wife, I've always told people that was a huge mistake. I'm just kidding. My fourth wife was the mistake. But that notwithstanding, you can always apologize and move on. You can make it right. And now's the time to start making things right. Let's make it right. Let's tell everybody, come on back home.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and because we constantly are subjected to changes in condition, especially in the fire service, nurses, emergency workers in general. If you're a cop, you're facing one shooter, now all of a sudden it's two shooters. Your situation just drastically changed. You're at a fire, changes in conditions constantly, and we'll start with an interior attack, then we might move to an exterior attack, then we might go back interior. So to again unilaterally apply a mandate on an experimental drug that we have no idea what the long-term effects are, the short-term effects, like so far so good, great, but that's
what the guy said who jumped off the 50-story building. So far
so good.
Well, yeah, and going back to Cindy's airplane analogy, which another one I love, we're building the plane as we're flying. First responders were the first pilots of this plane. Before there was a flight manual, we figured out how to fly this thing. And now that there's a flight school built, you're telling us, well, yeah, your hours of service don't count. You have to go get certified before you can fly again. That just doesn't make any sense to anybody. I have a couple of things I want to sum up here, but you mentioned the mayor, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you did, yeah, he's now slid down 3 firehouse poles and has an agenda and a goal to slide down 200 poles in the 200 plus firehouses we have. To me, he's making a mockery of our profession. This is a life-saving instrument. This is a tool for us to get to the rig faster, to respond. We are trained on this. Many people have been injured sliding down a pole. It's not a toy. It's not a novelty. It's not something to mock and make a joke of, especially while you're laying firefighters off. So that's just a side tangent on that.
Andy, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to make something perfectly clear. The mayor of New York City isn't just laying firefighters off. He's out there publicly saying they quit.
Well, I was getting into that too. And we were talking about, Bobby, you were talking about morals. Well, the morale, I've never seen the morale this low in the last 20 years on this job. Again, going to what the mayor said, the mayor took over for arguably the worst mayor in New York City history in de Blasio, who just finished 8 years. He was the one that imposed this mandate. And the new mayor, Eric Adams, who was a cop and says he's on the side of civil servants and understands what's happening, that he before us, he's come out and said, I agree, the mandates don't work, but who am I to change them? This is what he said. And then he said, I'm not terminating members, they're voluntarily quitting. So you've now called firefighters quitters. Firefighters have never quit a day in their life. We never have, we never will, we never would. We don't run from danger, we run to it. Well, we walk to it. And, we're never going to quit on anybody, ourselves, our fellow, colleagues, the public. It's just not who we are. So you're taking a situation and making it worse. You're pouring gasoline on a fire, not to use another, fire analogy, but you're pouring gas on a fire. And the hypocrisy with these mayors, you got Garcetti in LA talking about, I hold my breath when I take pictures, while the whole stadium is full of people without masks. I mean, it's just the public sees it And that's, I think, what's driving people nuts and why people are starting to come around and we're able to have these conversations. But again, it's not you and I that need to listen to this. It's not the fire engineering audience that needs to hear this. It's the skeptics that need to hear this, that really need to understand what we're talking about. I can't tell you how many people, I have a pretty big following on Twitter, mostly from the sports commentary I do. And I can't begin to tell you how many followers I've lost because they just saw it as you're anti-vaccine. And I said, I'm anti-mandate. I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm vaccinated. I have to be for my job. So I'm against the mandate, period. That's it. And people will unfollow me and silence me and put their fingers in their ears and not want to listen to anything and say, suck it up, just take your medicine. You're hurting society by doing this. Again, I'm not trying to make firefighters sound arrogant by saying this, but we are not the normal segment of society. You run on the treadmill for 3 times a week and you think you're in shape. Do that with 150 pounds of gear on in 1,000-degree heat after you just got off an aerial climbing up 5 flights, not knowing if you're going to get home or not. And then tell me those 20 minutes you ran on the treadmill were the same that what we just did in operation. So this is why we max our hearts out. This is why we tax our bodies so much. And we're happy to do it. But don't tell us you don't have a choice in something that's going into your body and could irreparably harm you. And this is why we need the public to understand what we're saying. We're not whining. We're not trying to sound like babies about it. We're asking for an honest ear. And that's what we seem to not have gotten for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And hopefully it's starting to change. But as you mentioned with the injunctions, this becomes a legal battle. And there's already people that are going to have lost their jobs. And there's already people that are going to have lost their lives before that legal challenge has any type of resolution. So it's, as Bobby said, it's never too late, but unfortunately in some of these situations, it's already too late.
Well, I'd say that the fire is not completely out yet. And this audience is a great audience because our professional firefighters, our volunteer firefighters, they're out there, they're in every single community and they make an impact on everyone in their community. I remember my neighbor one time saying, I went over there to just lend him a hand for a second. He goes, wow, he goes, firefighters, you guys are just always helping. So the fact is, we are all the way back from the revolution to today. Firefighters are the fabric and represent the very best in humanity. And we do have a powerful voice. And hopefully that voice comes forward to help these guys and women that they're not forgotten and we try to get their jobs back. Go ahead, Bobby.
I think to Frank's point, one of the things to remember about the fire service, and Andy, this might make you feel a little better about us. And I know David knows about this, but in the endo period.
Can I stop you real quick? I'm sorry. I don't want it to seem like I was saying anything negative about this audience. I was saying we're all on the same page in this audience.
No. I'm going to back you
Okay.
up, man. I think you said it perfectly. I couldn't say it that well, so I'm jealous. So if it appears in an editorial, I may or may not have channeled your thoughts, but I'm just teasing you. But no, you said it very well. I'm agreeing with you. In Japan, in the Endo period of time, and this is before Jesus, the sign of sophistication in a community was the fact that they had a fire service. Honest to God, you can look it up. It's called hasheki. And so I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's a Japanese word that refers back to the culture in the Endo times in Japan, ENDO, and hasheki was the sophistication, which was gauged by whether or not they had fire protection. So, we always talk about what we do. People say it's a blue collar job. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you think about the intent of the fire service, and that is to put yourselves in harm's way for total strangers, irrespective of their conditions, stations in life, or the possible long-term outcomes of what you're doing or immediate outcomes of what you're doing to yourself individually, it is the epitome of sophistication. It's the epitome of sophistication because Frank's earlier point, it's about the value of the individual. Now, that's where collectivism and authoritarianism is completely on the opposite side. And you can go down that road. You can embrace, the Marxist Engels, people. But remember that 200 years after, 160 years after those words were written, they had a meet in Frankfurt, Germany to find out why nobody thought it was a good idea. And now they're meeting 100 years later and nobody still thinks it's a good idea, except the people who think they're going to be in charge. So little political rant there, I couldn't resist. But it goes in with this theme, right? The opportunity, though, and I think I'd love to hear. I know David's been interestingly quiet, which is really weird for David because I've known.
That's why I'm always having Cindy on the radio show and everything. This is great.
Right. I feel like Cindy's channeling her inner David there. So, which is fine. I get it. David has a job and he gets paid. So I just think that now maybe it's a time for healing, right? Maybe it's a time to say, yeah, okay, we thought that was a good idea. Just because we thought it was a good idea at the time doesn't mean it's a good idea. I can't tell you how many, and I'm jokingly, I've only been married once, 48 years, the most beautiful woman in the world. But the point is that I've made many, many mistakes in my life. And the most beautiful moments in my life is when I've gone up to somebody that I absolutely screwed over unintentionally and said, man, I missed the boat there. I apologize. Because the arrogance of going forward after you realize you probably erred is unforgivable. It's just unforgivable. But to err is not, right? So if you're a politician out there and you laid people off or fired people, and full disclosure, my sister used to work at Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital in New York City. She was a nurse oncologist. She was a what do you call them? A nurse practitioner. She'd been doing it for 40 something years. And she did not want to leave. They vaccinated her out. She wouldn't take the vax. And so you're talking about decades of high level, intense training and a skill set that was probably second to none in her ward. Boom, gone. And she was one of thousands. And so, but if Sloan reached out to her and the other nurses and doctors and technicians that they let go and said, hey, man, we may have made a mistake there. Would you please come back? They would come back in a minute. They would come back joyously and gratefully and graciously. And
that's science, Bobby. When you look at the data and you change course based off the data, that's science.
And to Cindy's point, that's another piece of the plane. Aircrafts originally didn't have as many exits as they do now. People used to fly with parachutes strapped to their backs because they were necessary. They're not as necessary anymore. Although if they issued me one, I'd take it. But that's just me, right? So, I can't tell you, and we can go over for a little while, Frank. We've got some room. I want to let Andy talk a little bit about the other things he does, because I think that's important. And I'd like to let Cindy talk a little bit about her profession, because we are doing so much at FDIC, Cindy, and nurses can get CE from CAPC, which I know you can use for your licensing and things like that. So we're really grateful to have you folks on board and be. The nurses and firefighters work together so much. People forget that, they always say, oh, we work with the cops. We work with the nurses a lot more than we work with the cops. The cops point
married.
Well, and it's a good idea to marry one, right? The cops point to the bodies. The nurses tell us, hey, you did a good job here. Hey, you did that. Hey, thank you for doing this. Or, hey, next time, could you possibly do that? And that's how we learn and grow and take care of people better. So yeah, we have a good relationship with the cops. We tend to have my relationship with the nurses isn't as good as David's, obviously, but it's pretty damn good. So thank you for that.
He's the first responder and I'm the last responder.
Oh man, no, you're not. My other sister is. She owns a mortuary.
Okay. Well,
so she's technically the last responder. So yeah. She closes the lid. Yeah, you're done. So yeah, I'm getting one of them bells in my coffin that you can pull. Remember the dead ringers? I'm getting one of those bells.
Set up the flag. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, ding, 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 ding. So Andy, please would you mind telling everybody about your other blogs? Because I think they're wonderful and I think it's great. And I want to personally say, Pete Proclio, our producer, he sent "Science means updating your credence, which is your veracity, your credibility, with new information." Yes. Science means updating your credence with new information. Amen to that, right? So, Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, how people can listen to you more and get to know you better, because you got a great voice.
Well, thank you. And real quick, my mother is a nurse practitioner and actually teaches grad school and nurse practitioning now. So hat tip again to the nursing community. I have several cousins and family members who are in that profession as well. And it feels weird calling you Bobby, so I apologize for that before. But Chief Halton, I know you joke about being old, but I had no idea you worked alongside Jesus on the rig at one point in your career. So that was pretty impressive to hear. You asked what I do on the side. I've now completed 20 years in the fire service and still going. About 10 years ago, I got invested in writing and covering sports, mostly the NFL draft, fantasy football, fantasy baseball. I've become a top ranker in those, and I do a lot of my stuff on Twitter, and I've had different video shows and podcasts and guest appearances and everything like that. So if you're looking for anything like that, I'm on Twitter at Peoples with a Z, Penn, P-E-N. But really, more directly to this line, I did run for an executive board on our union position. I ran for recording secretary in our 2020 election. Narrowly lost, but it was a great experience for me personally. As big as our job is, it really, the longer you're on it, the smaller it gets. I realized how many people I knew in areas I never even knew they actually worked in, whether it was they've been there the whole time, they got promoted there, they transferred there. But it was great to see a lot of faces and get the support of so many. I'm good friends with everybody on our union executive board. And to that point, our union has done a tremendous job fighting for us and advocating for us. Our president, Andy Ansborough, has been on every publication, every outlet that will allow him, 30 seconds to talk. But that's kind of why I said, it just feels like it's falling on, I don't want to say deaf ears. It's just falling on the same ears. And I'm just hoping that, maybe I gave people an opportunity to have a shareable link that if they have anybody that's a doubter or a skeptic or a hater or, against us in any way or not listening to this conversation we're trying to have from our side of the fence, maybe now you have a shareable link. And I was able to help, sway somebody or convince somebody that we just want to be heard. We're not asking to hit the stop button. We're just asking to hit the pause button for a minute. I said at the very beginning of this, I feel very conflicted in that, there's a line of duty funeral that was just happening for one of our brothers that was lost last week. And, this is something we just do. You're either working or you're at it. So for me to not be there today, it's a little gut wrenching and I feel a little personal shame and guilt. But I made the conscious choice to come on here to hopefully be able to honor Jesse Gerhardt and the others we've lost and spread their names and the message for other firefighters that maybe don't have an opportunity to come on a show like this and get that point across. So, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about myself, but I really want to keep the focus on the 6 we've lost in the last 4 months: firefighter Vincent Malveau, Lieutenant Joe Maiello, Lieutenant Thomas Keary, firefighter Chris Viviano, firefighter Jesse Gerhardt, and then lastly, Lieutenant Robert Cruz. So, if anybody has any other questions or thoughts, or, I'm sure you can leave it on the comments. I'll check them on Facebook and happy to discuss this with anybody. And I appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to get some of these things out. And, hopefully it was enough to give somebody at least a reason to say, wait a minute, I hadn't really taken all of that into consideration and context.
Dave, you have some advice for if you're getting medical advice from a politician that you said on the radio the other night. So could you weigh in on that?
Absolutely. And to Bobby's point, I don't mind talking, Bobby, you know me. But my wife, obviously the smarter Polikoff, she has a lot better information to give. But one of the things that I try to tell people is if you're taking your medical advice from politicians, you're doing it wrong. You should be talking to your doctor. He's supposed to be giving you the best information based on the science and the information that they have. If your doctor is starting to get political on his information to you, find another doctor. Our doctor, he flat out said, you guys got COVID. After you got COVID, I don't know how long you should wait for your booster. It's anywhere between 30 or 60 days. So just get it in that time frame. But he admits we don't know everything yet. So again, don't get your medical advice from politicians. Get your medical advice from your doctor. That's why they went to school.
Or any celebrities.
Or anything like that. But one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, to Andy's point, is the reason why your mayor is going to all these firehouses is because he was a cop. Obviously, he didn't score well on the test, so he's trying to be a firefighter. So we all know that.
It was the background check.
Right. And then one of the last things, I want to plug my podcast show because I've been doing that for a while. I've had the opportunity to have Frank on it several times. Side Alpha Leadership. This month's podcast that I'm going to do, which will come up in March. I took the last 2 months off because of my new job. Cindy's going to be on it. And we're going to be talking about exactly what we just talked about with vaccines and all that. So Side Alpha Leadership, You can listen to it on any podcast listening platform. She'll be on there talking about all of her vaccine stuff. And last but not least, I want to give a shout out to Frank for allowing me the opportunity to work on his new book. It was an awesome opportunity, and to be published in something that I know is going to do every bit as good, if not better, than Nick Papa's book. So.
I'm going to have Bobby contribute, so that way my mom reads it and a couple other people, and it'll definitely outsell Papa's book. That's a challenge I'll take. Bobby, we'll give you the last word of today, and everybody. Andy, thank you so much for coming on. Your courage is commendable. It is a sad day, but giving a voice to those who just lost their job and our brother and sister firefighters is critical, and it is important. And we hope to see everybody at FDIC. And Bobby, I'll let you have the last word for today.
Yeah, just to echo Frank and Andy, our prayers, our legitimate prayers are with the Cruz family today. Words always fail you when you talk about the loss of anyone, but particularly a brother firefighter, because we all feel so close to one another. Just to Andy's point, when I did work with Jesus, I got to tell you, we were a warehouse fire together one time. There's fire to the left of us, fire to the right of us. Jesus bailed, so he wasn't that hot. But other than that, good guy. So I'm I got to give credit to that joke to Eric Roden, because Eric Roden, people tell the fire stories. It goes, there we were at the door, fire to the left of us, fire to the right of us, and Jesus bailed. God bless Eric Roden. If you want to follow somebody who's just a brilliant guy and an incredible human being, Eric Roden. So can't say enough about Deputy Chief Eric Roden, wonderful human being, an incredible shooter. Everybody's got a sideline, Andy. You got your sports. If you ever cover a competitive shooting, Chief Roden is ranked in the United States as a competitive shooter, and that's tougher to do than you'd think. I couldn't hit the desk next to me from 6 feet away with a handgun. Eric is he's an accomplished American sportsman as a shooter, and a lot of people don't know that about him. But it'd be a great sports line. If you want to bring on Eric, talk about shooting, he's really well known in it. But Andy, I can't again compliment you for your bravery and your courage and your passion. And Frank was right in his opening statements. Anybody can get up and cheer on the mob, AKA Robespierre and the Jacobians. But eventually the guillotine comes for them. The brave men and women who stand up early, like Cindy, like David, like Andy, like Frank, and say, hey, wait a second, let's slow down here. Let's look at, let's take a more measured look. Those folks are not always, appreciated. When things get tough, Admiral Ernest King, who was a naval officer during World War II, they brought him back in for the Pacific Fleet. He was far too old to be a naval officer. No comments, Andy. He was far too old. And there were several other officers they brought back, and they were having a conversation one day, and one of the other officers commented on their age and their tenure, and they said that the new Navy a few years ago was very anxious to get rid of them because they were too insensitive, they weren't progressive enough. The Roosevelt people wanted them out to bring in the new, more progressive new Navy. But King was listening to him, and he turned around and he said, yeah, when things get tough, they send for the sons of bitches. So, what he meant was there are certain people who are just inflexible in their principles, and principles don't change. Science does, all kinds of things, tactics do, principles don't. And so I'm a first principles guy. I always will be. I make no apologies for it. I'm unapologetically Catholic. I'm unapologetically patriotic, and I'm unapologetically a constitutionalist. And I stole that from my mentor and someone who inspires me every day, Justice Clarence Thomas, who I think is absolutely one of the finest living Americans. If you don't know about him, pull his autobiography. It's just phenomenal. Great American, and he stands with us on this issue, just so you know. He believes in individual choice. So thank you all. Andy, I hope to see more contributions from you. I know that you write primarily about sports, but we would love anything you want to send our way, even if it's sports related, as it hits in the, links into the fire service. We'd love to learn more about it. And, there's nothing firefighters like more than firefighting, except maybe sports in some cases. So kudos to you for your voice there is huge. You underplayed it, but you're a big deal. I mean, I checked you out before I came on. I'm like, this guy's a big deal. And so
Wow.
thank you for taking the time to be with us. And Cindy, thank you for your nursing. Boy, people have no idea how tough it is to be a nurse. They really don't. They truly are angels on earth, because when you're in the hospital and those folks help you out and make you feel better and put up with your whining and complaining and trust me, I was the worst. I was hitting that button. I hit that. I just tape it down, and every time a nurse would come in, he was so calm and so understanding, or she would just be the most gentle thing in the world. When I know they want to beat me over the head with my, bathroom dish, because I'm such a pain in the butt. So thank you. And as always, Frank, you're such a blessing to the American Fire Service. Thank you for all you do. I'll see you all at FDIC. For the Cruz family, if you all would just take a few seconds and pray. And if you're not religious, we'll pray for you. And go ahead,
And
Andy.
I add, and Jesse Gerhard as well, who
And
was
Jesse
also
Gerhard
this
as
week.
well. And Jesse Gerhard's family as well. So, please, the power of prayer is huge. And for those of us that believe, to the Gerhards and the Cruzes and all who were affected by them, I hope God lifts you up and gets you through this really, really difficult time. So, amen. And thank you for being with us today. And to everybody on Facebook, get on MeWe.
All right, that's it for Politics and Tactics today, and I'll leave you with a quote from Ronald Reagan. The most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm here from the government and I'm here to help." Have a great day.